Hi everybody, Cash here. Hello my darlings. Today I'm going to do something a little different because I've been asked over the weeks and months many times in the comments section how I do my pictures. When did I know I could do my pictures? When did it start? How did it develop? And so on. And I have not answered these questions because the channel was never set up for the purposes of talking about myself. I think that's boring and self-indulgent, and I didn't want to use the videos for that. But I thought if I lumped everything together in one video, then people would be satisfied and I could refer everybody back to this video and say, okay, it's a little self-indulgent, but if you want to know the answer to the questions you keep asking, go to this video. So this is the video, and I'll never mention it again. Alrighty, so basically the answer to the question, how do you do your pictures, is that I have a form of second sight, like double vision really. I can see reality, like I can see this setup in front of me right now, and I can also, if I adjust my eyesight, which is like, what would you say? It's like kind of pulling focus, the way a camera pulls focus in a movie, where one thing becomes blurred and another one becomes sharp, and it go like that. It's a bit like that. I simply draw down these visions, and they are 3D, and they are spectacularly colourful, like video games almost, actually. If you've ever seen the video game The Room, or The House of Da Vinci, they are just amazing corridors and doors and staircase adventures where you wander around and open doors, and it's like that. It's like those video games. And all I can do is write them into little stick figures on a piece of paper. I'm not doing the pictures justice, but I do my best. Once I'm seeing reality, I can't see the pictures. Once I'm seeing the pictures, I can't see reality. It's a weird thing. In fact, I was going down the street about 3 or 4 weeks ago when I was doing somebody's pictures. I was walking along doing somebody's pictures, and I heard honking, and I heard people yelling, and I'd wandered into traffic. I was in the middle of the road. I could have got killed, really. I was so horrified by that. I've never done my pictures outside since, you know, like walking down the street. I just thought that was a bad idea. I'm going to get killed. But, so I actually am able to adjust, but I can't see reality at the same time as seeing the pictures. I have to toggle between them, basically. Now, as to how it came about, in my early 30s, a friend of mine who's a hypnotist, and very experimental in what he did with his life and stuff, said, you've got to go to this workshop this weekend. It's amazing. There's a guy who can produce rainbows from his hands. And I thought, I gotta see that. It was my birthday weekend as well, so it meant giving up the whole weekend for this workshop. But I did, because I wanted to see this guy do this. He couldn't. Not without the aid of drugs. But his name was Mike Patelli, and he was a cameraman, a movie cameraman. He did TV commercials that were very famous at the time. And he used to get, every so often, a group of people, 40 people, in the room, and for 3 days he would do spiritual stuff with them, without their really knowing what was going on. And it was immensely powerful. And every single person in that room, some of whom were actually quite famous, I knew them from TV, but they all had breakdowns of one kind or another. It's almost like they removed the blockages from their life, all the worries and the anxiety and the fears, all spewed out of them. And the trauma and the anger and whatever resentment they might have towards their parents or the world, all spewed out for about an hour each time. And in the end, I had the same thing. And I lay on the floor and I screamed and kicked, and nobody could touch me because I was like hot like a furnace. But all this stuff came out of me. The next day, it was very disturbing. I remember it vividly. I was walking around Covent Garden in London, and if I looked at somebody, there was a set of moving pictures between me and them. So if I looked at you, there would have been this set of pictures between us, and you were like in the background. I wasn't sure what was happening, but it was very disturbing. But I felt very calm and loving and kind, because all this stuff, this rage, disappointment, frustration, whatever, had come out of me, and I felt like unblocked, completely authentic and at one with the world. And so for days and weeks, I went around with this thing where I could see images between me and other people, and I had no idea what they were. And then I think over time I figured out that there was something to do with their life. It was something, it related symbolically or metaphorically or something to their life. And then I had a friend who was a handwriting analyst. She'd been 32 years she'd be doing this. And she said, you should apply it to handwriting. You might be quite good at that. And I thought, what a boring subject. Who wants to know about handwriting, really? Because it's a kind of science, graphology. It's like, yeah, okay. But she gave me a Christmas card and said, look at this. Look at what this is. And tell me what you can see from this card. And as I looked at the card, all the writing got up and walked around. It was weird and creepy and unsettling, and I mean, really, I needed to go to a clinic and be sedated at this point. I would just look at this writing, any writing, really. She could give me cards and postcards and letters, and it would get up and dance and walk around the page. And the dancing and walking wasn't random. It related to the person's life. That was the discovery about that. And so for the next few years I did that. I wrote books about it. I was on TV a fair amount with it, that I could look at a piece of handwriting and tell you all about the person right back to their childhood. It had their soul's path, like a fabric, written into it. And I was able to see that without ever understanding why I could. But it was something to do with channeling, it was something to do with being tuned in to some greater inspiration or some downloads or whatever. I don't know what it was. I used to go to the theatre a fair bit, and I could look at the poster of a coming attraction or like a show that was going to be opening, say, in 4 months in the West End of London. I could look at the poster and know when it would close. And I used to keep a note, and I would go, okay, that one is going to close after 6 months. That one won't last a week. This one won't last a year, and so on. And I kept a note, and they closed bang on time. They were disasters or they were successes, then they closed. I was right every single time. So I wrote to Cameron Mackintosh. Now, he's the guy who produced Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis, Cats. He did all these things, right? So super successful guy. He had a show coming out in the West End. And I looked at the poster. I knew it was going to be a flop. And I could tell when it was going to close. Forget the date, but I had the date in my head, right? And so I put it in an envelope. And I went to his office. And I met with him. It was great. I met with Cameron Mackintosh. I sat there in his wonderful old-style antique-type office. And I told him what I did. I gave him the envelope. And I said, this is when your show will close. Keep it on your desk and open it once you've decided, right? And so he said, okay, I will. But I will never have you do this for me. I'll take part in this, and I'll open the envelope when you say, but I will never, ever hire you to predict the future of my shows, because I love theatre too much, and I love the gamble, and I love creating things, and I don't want to know whether they'll succeed or fail. Which I think is fair enough, actually. And so I was a bit disappointed, but it's fair enough. And so I went away, and I followed this show through, and it tanked. And it tanked big time, actually, just as I said it would. And we were approaching the date when I said it would close. And there were no audiences there. It was just like a disaster. And about 2 days before the date came up when it should close, because it should have closed, he announces that he's going to keep it open another 3 weeks. And I knew. I didn't know. I suspected with all my heart that he'd opened the envelope and gone, right, well, I'm not falling for this, because this guy's going to get publicity off this. So I'm going to keep it open. And he kept it open for another 3 weeks, and it tanked and it closed. But I was right. It tanked and it closed. That's how I was using this thing at the time. And I had no way of knowing what I would use it for, but that was one way I used it for. Then I remember doing it for people. I thought, oh, I could do it for people maybe. Not just posters, but people. And I did my parents. It was a very, very simple picture. They were very unsophisticated pictures at that time. And there were two rods, one longer than the other. And my father had been a drinker, a smoker, he'd really not looked after himself at all. And so I called my mother and I said, we've got to do something to save my father's life, because these things, one goes on for a very long time and one is stumpy, which means he's gonna go. But I think we can change the future because nothing is set. We have free will. If we get him on a better diet, we stop him smoking, stop him drinking, we can save his life. And my mother was so disheartened by this news. And she goes, oh no. And I thought, yeah, I mean, I understand you were scared of being a widow. What I discovered was that she had been diagnosed with kidney cancer and hadn't told anybody. Certainly hadn't told me. And when I talked about the two rods, and one was short and would end, she knew it was her. And I remember she kept checking in with me about the pictures and saying, anything new? Looking for hope, looking for encouragement. And there was one set of pictures where there was like a biplane. You know those old-fashioned biplanes, like those Magnificent Men and their flying machines? It was like that. And it was bouncing along the ground and it wouldn't take off. And she said to me one day, I remember on the phone, she goes, did the little plane take off? And I lied. And I said, yes, it did. But it didn't. And she died about 3 months later, I think, possibly. It was very, very disturbing, that experience. And I never quite got over it and didn't do these pictures for a number of years after that. I thought, I don't want to know this. I don't want to deal with people in this way. I don't want to be the guy who knows these things. I suddenly got it into my head that I must go to Israel. No idea why. It's the least likely thing for me to do. What had happened was that my mother had died, and before she died, she and I made a pact that whenever I was in a church or a cathedral, anywhere in the world from then on, I would light a candle for her and say a little prayer thing. And I did it. I kept my promise. But the one she wanted done most, the one she never got to, was the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. And I thought, if I could light a candle for my mother in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, my mission would have been complete, my promise would have been fulfilled. So I decided to do that. And then for some reason I decided to write a book about Israel and the history of the Jews. I'm not Jewish, I'm not Arab, but I decided to write a book about it. Before I went to Israel, I had a psychic reading from a woman called Debbie Griggs, who is amazing at these little details and stuff. She drew me a map, and she said, if you go here, this will happen, that will happen, you'll hear this, and your life will change forever. So I went to Israel in 2017, and as part of the trip I was on, I had to visit the Western Wall. You know, you've never been there, you see all these Jewish faithful. They line up by the Western Wall and they say their prayers and they rock backwards and forwards like candle flames and they say their prayers. And I went along and I put my head against the wall and I said a bunch of prayers for people too, including one for myself. And I said to the wall, as ridiculous as it seems, I'm lost. I don't know what to do. You've given me these gifts, you've given me so many good things, and I have no sense of purpose. I don't know what to do with these gifts you've given me. And a lot of people don't know that the Western Wall in Jerusalem is actually the center of an energy vortex. And it's a very, very powerful place. There's a reason empires and armies have fought over it for thousands of years. They feel the pull of the vortex. And as I had my head against that wall and I asked for help, it was like a hand came out of the wall, reached into my head, and squeezed my brain. I've never felt anything like it in my entire life. And by the time I pulled away, I was crying. And I cried on and off solidly for 2 days, maybe. Certainly for the rest of that day. And I had to wear sunglasses and walk around because I was crying so much. Again, it was like a release. It was like, we got you back. You're fine. Go about your business. You'll be okay. We're watching out for you. That's what it felt like. And don't worry and don't be anxious. And get out of yourself. Get out of your own light. Just be now what you need to be, and we will guide your feet. It was very powerful. It was very, very powerful. And moving, and it changed my life. My life was never the same. Came back, completed the book about Israel. Instead of being a travel book, it turned out to be a book about how we can achieve peace in our lives. That came after I went to Israel. And then it all started falling into place. I happened to know an Israeli woman who sent me a link to David Johnson's videos. If you've not seen David Johnson, you should. He channels spirit. He's absolutely amazing. And it's been incredibly encouraging during this journey. I watched the video and saw him do that and thought, I can do that. I can do what he does. In a different way, but I can do it. And then I spoke to Whimsy Anderson, who is a phenomenal tarot reader and holistic doctor, actually, naturopath, I think, in Los Angeles. And she said immediately, you should do videos. And sure enough, the response was incredible. What it taught me, this journey from childhood to now, is that we all need to be acknowledged and seen, to be loved, to be heard, to belong. And it's only when I joined this community and started doing my thing and found like-minded people who I could interact with that I thought, oh, there is a place I belong. It took a long, long time for all this to come together. But now I look back, every little bit of it came together in this moment. And I think everybody's life is the same way, but we have to step out of the way and accept it and embrace what comes. In my Why Your Life Matters book, I say, expect nothing, accept everything. And that's what I've learned. If there's one big lesson, it's that. Expect nothing, accept everything. Alrighty, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll be back next time with a normal video that deals with the political stuff. Alright, see you then. Bye-bye.